Before we begin, spoilers for Deltarune Chapters 1 through 4 abound, so watch at your own risk. I'll be the first to admit that I'm obsessed with Deltarune. Even more than its famous predecessor, Undertale, I just can't get this game out of my head. The incredible story, the awesome characters, the engaging combat, the superb lore, all of it is just so gripping in a way most games don't grip me. For someone like me, it felt like Christmas came early this year, as chapters 3 and 4 of 7 finally released, bringing with them answers to some of the mysteries we've grappled with since chapter 2 4 years ago. We finally got to see the knight, officially met Carol Holiday, saw one of the Titans, and even found the place where it rained. If you know, you know. In many ways, chapters 3 and especially chapter 4 answer many of the mysteries offered by 1 and 2. However, many mysteries still remain, and the one I'm most interested in today is, well, the one in the title. Who stole the Shadow Mantle? This video was sponsored by the Dark Fountain that gives the world form. Thank you, Dark Fountain, for sponsoring this video. During the epilogue of Chapter 2, there's this blink and you'll miss it moment with the mysterious shopkeeper Sham, who has been helping the heroes in their quest to defeat the powerful secret bosses of each chapter and gain their shadow crystals. In this brief moment, Sham describes an item called the Shadow Mantle, a scrap of cloth that will be necessary to defeat the next secret boss. However, Sham suddenly realizes that the Shadow Mantle is just gone from the shop. They wonder if it was stolen, then cynically states, well, now, there goes your one chance of victory. It was such an abrupt moment that I never thought about it too much back in the day, assuming that Sham had just misplaced it or something. However, after the release of chapters 3 and 4, my opinion on the whole scene has changed drastically. We have new context, more lore, and surprising ties between seemingly unrelated characters. With all of this new information, I now believe the theft of the Shadow Mantle isn't just a random event, but rather a mystery that needs to be solved. And since it's a mystery, I'd better treat it like one. So let's start with the facts of the case that we already know. But first, if you're enjoying this video and want to see more videos like this, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. Firstly, Toby Fox is a good writer. I could try to offer up proof for this, but just play Undertale or Deltarune if you need proof. Anyways, because he's a good writer, we know that this isn't just some throwaway line from Sham. If Sham believes this scrap is so important, then it is. Therefore, when looking for the culprit, we'll need to find a person with motive who had the means to pull off this theft. In other words, in order to find who done it, we need to both know why done it and how done it. Secondly, we know that Sham somehow knows the future, at least enough to know how dangerous the next secret boss will be and exactly what is needed to defeat them. With only the information from the first 2 chapters, it was unclear how they knew the future. But after the second 2 chapters, it's clear that Sham is intimately knowledgeable about at least aspects of the prophecy. Similarly to how Ralsei also seems to generally know what should happen in the story. What's interesting, however, is that Sham doesn't anticipate the mantle being stolen, which either implies that their knowledge is limited or that the mantle being stolen isn't mentioned in or part of the prophecy. Thirdly, the mantle is extremely well hidden. dwelling inside a discarded video game within the TV world that can only be accessed by near-perfect performance on the world's boards, or by bribery. And once inside the video game, even then, discovering the secrets of the game world are unintuitive and intentionally game-breaking, requiring you to go out of bounds and literally think outside the box on multiple occasions. This proves one thing. Whoever stole it did not want us, the player, to find it, that's for sure. Fourthly, the Shadow Mantle is guarded by a fierce, mysterious foe who technically goes unnamed, but whose music track is titled ERAM, so I'll call it Aram. Somehow, this foe intimately knows about Chris's journey, taunting Chris for trying to get all of the Shadow Crystals. Chris. Oh, Chris. Is it fun, Chris, playing around like this? That's why you're searching for them, aren't you? The Shadow Crystals, and the Shadow Mantle that I'm holding. Do you honestly think it'll get you what you want? No. Part of you is just enjoying this, isn't it? Aram even goes so far as to call out Chris for enjoying the events of the weird route if you're on that route, adding, the same part of you that enjoyed yesterday, knowing you could say it wasn't really you. Its speech ends the same way in both routes, with, oh, don't make that sour face. I can see you in the dark, you know. The question is, can you? There are two notable things about the scene. One, Aram says that it is holding the Shadow Mantle, making it very clear that it is not the Shadow Mantle itself. Secondly, somehow Aram seems to know about Chris's repressed violence streak, the one that's heavily implied by the mysterious mental hospital that is part of the Chapter 4 Egg Quest, where we draw pictures and don't kill each other. Aram taunts them for this violent streak upon his defeat, only parting with the Shadow Mantle once it sees Chris's eyes flickering red like flame. There's a lot to unpack with Aram, I'll go over it later. Fifthly, we know that according to Ralsei, dark fountains always reflect their creator's will in some way, shape, or form. We can see this in action in Chapter 4 when Susie attempts to recreate a previous dark world, entering it only to find that it has changed drastically. We also see this in Chapter 3 in the form of Tenna, who reflects Chris's separation anxiety and desire to see their family back together. Finally, we know that when a dark fountain is created, all of the objects in the room either become darkners or dark world items, and the way that the act and the very design of the dark world reflect the will of the creator, as I stated earlier. This is especially notable for two reasons. Firstly, we know that the person who opened up the TV dark world in the Dreamer household was Chris, for reasons we don't yet fully understand. Don't worry, we'll circle back to that later. Secondly, the Shadow Mantle is found deep within the recesses of the TV world, which means that the object it's based on in the light world also must be in the Dreamer household. This fact alone immediately removes 95% of the potential thief candidates, as someone would have needed to go to the closet dark world, or perhaps the unused classroom dark world if the mantle was stolen during Chapter 1, exit to the light world, and then move the object the mantle is based on to the Dreamer household. This eliminates every Darkner except Ralsei, Rules Card, Lancer, and the original Starwalker, and every Lightner except for Chris, Susie, and most notably the Roaring Knight. Speaking of the Roaring Knight, it's extremely important to note that they are the secret boss in question, the boss the Shadow Mantle is needed for. Without it, even a partial victory over the Knight is, as Sham says, next to impossible. This makes one thing very clear: whoever stole the Shadow Mantle does not want us to defeat the Knight. As Ralsei, Lancer, the original Starwalker, and Susie all presumably want the Roaring Knight to be defeated, it's safe to assume that they wouldn't actively help the cause of evil. That just leaves us with three candidates: Rules, the Knight, and Chris. Rules is an interesting case, as he seems to just gravitate towards whomever has the most power at present. He's also comic relief though, so I feel like it's safe to say that while it would be a crazy twist for him to be the thief, I doubt he's actively working with or for the Knight, as ridiculous as that would be. He could have had the means, but he has no strong motive. As for the Knight themselves, it's a fascinating thought that they would be aware enough of the prophecy to know of the Shadow Mantle, and actively do their darndest to keep it out of the hero's hands. However, there's three crucial flaws in this line of reasoning. Firstly, they didn't create this dark world, and arrived so late that they didn't even have time to pawn off a shadow crystal to any freedom-seeking individual. Ram. How then could they have had the time to hide the Shadow Mantle, and so intricately at that? Secondly, if they were the ones who stole it, why would they bring it to the Dreamer household at all? If it's a tool against them, shouldn't they just dispose of it in the light world? This seems like an out-of-character blunder on their part, and I have a tough time believing it. The third flaw is this. How could they have stolen it from Sham's shop? Sham has never actually met the Knight, or at least has never told us they have. It's also safe to assume that the Knight has never shown their face in Castletown either, as they've surely been brought up by at least somebody. Therefore, the Knight is the opposite of rules. Even though they have a strong motive, they have absolutely no means. And thus we arrive at the end of the facts of the case, left with only one possible candidate. You. That's right. It could only have been you, thief. And your name is... I'm forgetting something, aren't I? Or rather, someone. I can feel you typing out the comments now. But Phoenix, what about Aram? What about John Mantle? It's literally the one holding it. Surely it's the thief, right? Well, my dear viewer, that is a very good point. One which is definitely worth going over. After all, usually, cases like this are pretty simple. The one left holding the stolen goods is usually the thief. However, I don't think that line of reasoning holds up in this case for one key reason. Aram is a big jerk to Chris. Aram spends nearly every line of dialogue it has taunting Chris, literally trying to get a rise out of them. It doesn't even hesitate to bring up the weird root and rub it into Chris's face. So, if it was the one who stole the Shadow Mantle and made Chris's life difficult, why doesn't it say so? After all, its specific words are, "That's why you're searching for them, aren't you? The Shadow Crystals, and the Shadow Mantle that I'm holding. Not the Shadow Mantle that I stole. Not the Shadow Mantle that I am. The Shadow Mantle that I'm holding." This line, which in my mind kills the Aram stole the mantle theory, also kills another theory, popular one, that Aram is literally just the mantle itself. So while the joke of calling it John Mantle is really funny, it's also just not true. Aram has the mantle, yes, but it was not the one who originally stole it. This brings us back to the culprit at large. Once again, with feeling, it could only have been you, thief, and your name is Chris. I know this sounds absolutely ridiculous. After all, Chris is one of the heroes, one of the people who would benefit most from having the Shadow Mantle in the Fun Gang's duel against the Knight. And yet, as with nearly every single one of Toby Fox's characters, there's a side to Chris we're only just now beginning to learn about. Despite the fact that the entirety of the first two chapters were spent attempting to seal dark fountains, Chris suddenly uses a knife to open a dark fountain in their own home at the end of Chapter 2. This isn't even the first time they've acted this way, as in the end of Chapter 1, they somehow managed to remove us, the player, from their body before brandishing the same knife. Needless to say, we've known for a while that Chris is up to something, we weren't sure what. Thankfully, Chapter 4's Lightworld segment finally answered some of those questions, as the player can eavesdrop on a phone call between Chris and someone almost 100% confirmed to be Mayor Carol Holiday, discussing how important it is to keep Susie from entering the shelter, the same shelter the Knight fled to after the events of Chapter 3. She also mentions that the next Dark World, also created by the Knight, will be in the church. Finally, Carol calls Chris at the end of Chapter 4 and reminds them of a promise they made. These phone calls confirm two extremely important things. 1. Chris is in cahoots with both the Mayor and the Knight. And 2, Chris does not want the player to know. They even go so far as to remove us, the player, from them when we attempt to get the code to the shelter ourselves. They even delete their call history so we can't call Carol back at any point during Chapter 4. Now, this is all well and good, but what does this have to do with the Shadow Mantle? The answer lies in the strangest of places, with everyone's favorite #1 rated salesman 1997, Spamton G. Spamton. Just one more tangent, I promise. After your initial encounter with him in the alleyway, Chris can later go to Spamton's shop in the trash dump in the cyberworld. His wares may all be easily ignored, but his dialogue should not. One of the strangest moments happens if you, the player, select the Night dialogue option, which goes as follows. Speaking of communion... Chris, did you know that the Night... No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Too many excess vacation days? Take a vacation straight to hell. As was pointed out by Reddit user Trouslin Abone in a post I've linked below, this scene takes on a completely different light with the knowledge that Chris is working with the Knight in some capacity. Spamton relates the Knight to communion, which both relates to both the church and fellowship, i.e. the Knight is working with someone. Chris is painfully aware that we can hear everything Spamton says, and halfway through his sentence, he suddenly freaks out, completely dropping his normally esoteric speaking mannerisms. This sudden lucidity is extremely unnerving, as the only other time he's like this is after his defeat in his secret boss fight, where he essentially gives up on his dream of being free. OP's theory, which I share, is that Chris threatens Spamton to keep him quiet about the Knight, which explains his sudden shift in behavior. He then snaps back to his usual self, threatening us in return. Fascinatingly, Spamton's comments about vacation days and going to hell directly mirror a moment in Deltarune's parallel story, Undertale. During the events of the No Mercy run, the player can choose to threaten the shopkeeper, Burger Pants, to which he responds, "I can't go to hell, I'm all out of vacation days." These lines are clearly supposed to be mirrors of each other, which makes me feel confident in saying that they come from the exact same circumstances, i.e., the shopkeep in question is being threatened. Chris somehow being able to do this without our knowledge leads us back into the topic at hand, the theft of the mantle itself. We have all the clues. It's time to piece them together into one coherent narrative. Come now, Watson, the game is afoot. Picture this. You are Chris, and you've made a promise you can't break. A promise to assist Carol and the Knight in their plans to open the fountains. You're not given all the information, but rather do as you're told however you can. However, you don't have complete control over your own body. Outside of short bursts, the soul you somehow have controls you, forcing you to speak, to act, to fight as one of the Delta warriors in the Dark Worlds. You enjoy it though, especially when you get to be with your new friend Susie. But you have a mission to complete, and a very simple one at that. You must protect the Knight and their mission, whatever that is, at all costs. Somehow, either because of foresight from your co-conspirators, or because Sham lets it slip, you learn of the Shadow Mantle, a powerful artifact that can allow one determined enough to defeat the Knight in combat, or at least stand long enough to try. It doesn't matter if it's premeditated or a spur-of-the-moment act, because right before Sham goes to the back of the shop to get the mantle, you steal it. After all, no one can meddle with the Knight's plans, not even your friends, and not even the soul. You somehow know they can't see you while you're in the shop menu, so your crime is perfect. No witnesses. However, there is indeed a part of you that is enjoying all of this. That part of you that you try so hard to forget, something from your past you thought was gone. Playing the hero, exploring dark worlds, maybe even searching for the shadow crystals by defeating powerful foes. All of it is just so fun, in a way. After all, without play, the knife grows dull. So you steal the mantle, but you don't dispose of it, not wholly. You hide it in your house, away from prying eyes, and as commanded by Carol and or the knight, you open a dark world in your own home. After all, Toriel and Undyne need to be taken. It's part of the plan, after all. But you didn't anticipate Aram. In the dark world formed by your own will, that part of yourself that you work so hard to hide becomes real. It manifests, it taunts you. It reveals that part of you to the soul, the player, and you snap. After all, this is the violent part of you. There was never a chance to settle things peacefully. You fight it. No room for mercy, but no matter how hard you try, you just can't seem to kill it. But of course you can't. After all, it's a part of you. But you do manage to subdue it, or at least you think you have. That's when it deals the fatal blow to you. Before leaving to who knows where, it taunts you, saying, "There, that's what I wanted to see. Flickering red like pretty little flames. Your eyes can't hide it, Chris. Without play, the knife grows dull." Well, enough of that. We both have work to do. So if you want this mantle, hurry up and take it. If you can reach it. Finally, the Shadow Mantle is attained, though not before being absolutely terrified by that violent part of you, now fully manifest in the dark world. And yet, despite it all, part of you secretly enjoyed the search. The rest of the chapter proceeds as you expected it to the point where you're not shocked at all that the knight themselves appears, or that Susie picks a fight with them. You fight them too, just hard enough to convince Susie and Ralsei that you're trying, but not hard enough that you'll ruin the plan. You both hold back against each other, and even if the fight doesn't look like it's going the right way, you can always cough to let them know to wrap it up. Either way, regardless if the player found the mantle or not, your mission is complete, and part of you enjoys it. That was a lot, huh? Chris being the Shadow Mantle's thief, if true, could have huge ramifications down the line. It shows just how far they're willing to go to sabotage the rest of the Delta Warriors, and further explores their craftiness. There were quite a few candidates at the start, sure, but no matter which way I looked, the cards kept turning up Chris. In fact, given the limited knowledge we have about Dark Worlds, I believe it's next to impossible for the thief to be anybody else, unless a character we haven't met yet shows up. So what do you guys think? If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. But what was that bit about Aram just then? Aram? A part of Chris's subconscious? My claim about Aram being the representation of Chris's dark side seems like a pretty massive stretch at first, but I think there's plenty of evidence for it. Consider this a bonus theory on top of the original. Here's the proof. 1. In the game's files, the boss itself is referred to as Nightmare, and the name of its track is just Mare, as in Nightmare, backwards. 2. All of the hidden video game areas, not including the Legend of Tenna, as clear examples of fiction within fiction, seem to contain more possibilities and less limitations than their surroundings. One example of this is the Old Hermit, an out-of-place biblio who can't speak unless you talk to his video game counterpart. He has the means to lead Chris, and Chris alone, to the Forgotten Man. Speaking of the Forgotten Man, he is some strange person we've been seeing, not seeing? Glimpses of in chapters 1 and 2. He's always behind a tree, which according to chapter 4's egg room isn't on accident. Something happened to Chris, maybe related to their violent tendencies. Something with the man. And in art therapy, they always end up drawing the same tree over everything they paint. But here, in a strange Game Boy-esque video game within a dark world, the man speaks for the first time. Even more notably, he explicitly states that this place is the only place he can speak at all. 3. Ram, this man who sets up all of the S-rank video games for Chris, states that he knows what Chris wants. Freedom. Some real fun. That's the purpose behind the sword game, after all. Because of all this, I think that the truth of Aram is as follows. Ram, reflecting the will of the Fountain's creator, Chris, manipulates a video game to be exactly what Chris wants. But within this fiction of a fiction, more is possible than it would first seem. Things that are incompatible are suddenly compatible. Things that are forgotten are suddenly remembered. And things that are repressed come back to light. This violent streak, this dark part that Chris doesn't want anyone to know about, suddenly comes to life. It manifests as Aram. It uses the promise of the stolen Shadow Mantle as leverage to force that violent side out of Chris, successfully reigniting a violent part of them that was hidden before. And it's very possible we've already seen some of the consequences of that. Fun fact, did you know that if you complete the Shadow Mantle quest, Chris does significantly higher damage if you fight Tenna? This absolutely could be because of the aforementioned violent streak. It could also be from a different motivation. After all, on the Shadow Mantle quest, a video game version of Tenna accidentally let slip to the player that it was Chris that he made a deal with, not the Roaring Knight. Either way, like Spamton before him, Chris takes out some sort of frustration or anger out on Tenna if you complete that quest, which I think is very noteworthy. That's all for this mini-theory, and this video as a whole. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe. I love making all kinds of video game content, so if that interests you, I'd love for you to stick around. This video was a massive labor of love for me. It took me almost 20 hours from start to finish, so I'd really appreciate it if you shared it with anybody who you thought might enjoy it. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on my theory in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, love you all, bye!